The junior senator from Virginia.
I ask if we're in a quorum call.
We are.
Could I ask that the quorum call be suspended?
Without objection.
Madam President, I have 4 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Madam President, I rise today to try with my colleagues to put an end to the double shutdown threat. There are 2 shutdown threats existing right now in the United States Capitol. One is a threat by certain members in the House majority to shut government down at the end of the month. That would be foolish. It would hurt people unnecessarily. It would be particularly foolish given the existence of federal law. It would be particularly foolish given the existence of federal law that says federal employees get paid even during a shutdown. How would it be fiscally conservative to shut the government down, lock federal employees out of their offices, disable them from serving their fellow Americans, and pay them? So we need to put an end to any risk of shutdown or threat of shutdown, and it's frankly a bad faith tactic even to raise it. But the second shutdown we need to avert is a shutdown of military promotions, and that is what I want to address today. The senior senator from Alabama has held up political nominations of more than 300 senior military officers for months. I've spoken about this numerous times on the Senate floor, and yet it is getting more and more severe every day. And this is the behavior of one senator who has placed the hold on these nominations, but frankly, it's behavior that is being enabled by his colleagues on the Republican side of this body. Military leaders who have done nothing other than volunteer to wear the nation's uniform and risk their lives in serving this country, who have served honorably, have had their lives and careers derailed over a disagreement on a policy matter that these officers had nothing to do with. A few weeks ago, Senator Reid and I took the floor, and we read the name and backgrounds of all who have been blocked. We read their name, their rank, how long they've served, where they've been deployed, military awards, nominations, and medals they've received: Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, all of whom are being blocked. It's extremely disrespectful to hold these nominations simply because an executive agency has implemented a policy that one senator does not like. And as I've explained previously on the floor, it's particularly galling because we have repeatedly given this senator an opportunity to convince his colleagues that the DOD policy is wrong, and he's been unsuccessful. In the Armed Services Committee, where we served together, he wanted a vote on an amendment to change the DOD policy. He failed. I have failed in making amendments in the Armed Services Committee before, and I never take out my failure on people who are serving wearing the uniform of this country. If I'm not persuasive enough to convince my colleagues of a policy, I'm not going to punish those who are serving this country. This is causing critical challenges in critical positions throughout the DOD, and it's affecting Virginia, just as it is all states. Of those who are being held, 39 of the positions are positions that affect Virginians. They're unable to move their families, unable to put their children in school. They can't start the jobs for which they have been nominated based upon their track record. Of the 39 positions, 25 are in one region, Hampton Roads, Virginia, the center of sea power in this country. These affect operations, modernization, and the future of the largest naval base in the world. But it's not just Hampton Roads. It's also McLean, Fort Belvoir, Falls Church, Fort Gregg Adams, and Winchester. The irresponsible hold is not only affecting the lives of individuals and affecting the strength of our military, it is getting attention from around the world. It is getting attention from allies who depend on us and want to know we're reliable, and it's also getting attention from adversaries. Let me just read a sampling, and this is a small sampling, of headlines about how the actions of the United States Senate in blocking these appointments are being interpreted around the world. RT is Russia Today newspaper, an article that was a somewhat gleeful one: U.S. military hit by unprecedented leadership void. This is a good news story. in RT. The action of the Senate is a good news story in Russia today. Al Jazeera, this is not a publication of an adversary, but it's a publication that is widely read throughout the Middle East, including by folks in nations who are adversaries. Senator stalls U.S. military promotions and anti-abortion standoff. This is going throughout the Middle East. BBC News, the UK is probably our most reliable ally militarily and also in the intelligence community. They're part of the Five Eyes. We share intel. Senator Tuberville, no truce over military blockade on abortion. Madam President, you know President Biden 2 years ago announced a pivotal new partnership called AUKUS, the U.S., Australia, and the U.K. This is an alliance that has been important and will be more important, and yet what is being read by the citizens and military leaders in the United Kingdom, they are reading about this action of the United States in blocking military promotions. This is a publication, and I got to admit, I cannot pronounce this, but I will translate it. It is Global Times. It is a publication in the People's Republic of China that is subordinate to People's Daily. The dispute over the right to abortion has been spreading like fire! Exclamation point. This is a good news story in China. More than 300 appointments were blocked by Republican lawmakers, and the 3 U.S. military branches angrily denounced them. This is what our adversaries are saying about what is happening in this chamber, more accurately, what is not happening in this chamber. The Sydney Morning Herald, again, this AUKUS announcement about our framework with the U.S. and the U.K. will depend heavily upon the not only cooperation with the Australians, but the Australians have pledged to invest billions of dollars in the American submarine industrial base so that we can train them and eventually build up a domestic submarine production capacity in Australia. U.S. Senator blocks hundreds of military promotions over reproductive rights as the Australian Parliament is making the decision about whether to commit these resources to the United States in a historic way. This is what they are reading about the American military and the leadership of this body with respect to promotion of military members. CBC, this is the Canadian Broadcasting Network, and this is, again, one of our primary allies in the world who we work with together on everything. Embassies unstaffed, military gaps, America's toxic politics spills into foreign affairs, one of our best allies. That's what they are saying about us. And then finally, this last publication. This is a publication that's a Taiwanese publication. Taiwan is increasingly reliant upon the United States and other nations to try to protect them from Chinese aggression. U.S. anti-abortion senator boycotted general promotions, criticized for assisting the Communist Party. Whether it's our allies or our adversaries, they watch what we do and they watch what we don't do. And they are paying critical attention to the blockade of these worthy men and women in the military. Now, my Republican colleagues have sort of switched tactics. For a while, they weren't sure whether they wanted to defend the blockade that the senator from Alabama is leading, and they've realized it's indefensible. So now they're trying to blame Senator Schumer for it. Senator Schumer should just take responsibility for addressing this by putting votes on the floor. Senator Schumer has nothing to do with these blocks. During his entire time in this Senate, he's not put a blanket hold on military promotions, nor has any other member of the Democratic caucus. The suggestion that it's Senator Schumer's fault is laughable. The Congressional Research Service has done the study and suggests that the only way to overcome this massive blockade by the Republicans would be to take up each of these appointments, hundreds of them, and that would take over 700 hours to complete what throughout decades has been a matter of course in this body. And of course, if we did that, we wouldn't get to the budget. We wouldn't get to other important priorities. We wouldn't get to FAA reauthorization. We wouldn't get to the Farm Bill. We wouldn't get to confirm judges. And so the notion that we'll just bring them all up individually, the Republican majority knows that that is not practical. Some have suggested something that frankly is even more pernicious and that I find insulting. Some of my Republican colleagues have said, okay, look, Senator Tuberville is holding hundreds of people, including service chiefs and the head of the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Why don't we do this? Why doesn't Senator Schumer just bring up the top brass, and we'll have votes on the top brass, and allow Senator Tuberville to keep punishing everybody else down the line? That's not a good faith offer, and it is directly contrary to the spirit of the American military. I'm not a veteran. I serve on the Armed Services Committee from a very military state. My oldest son is a United States Marine. If you say to somebody in the military, just advantage the brass and punish everybody underneath them, I would advise you not to say that to anybody in the military. That is not the American military ethic. I've heard my son say many times, officers eat last. You take care of the enlisted. You take care of the lower ranks before you take care of the higher ups. And so the notion that this body, or even some of the military nominees who have been advanced for the high positions, would accept this body acting on them while continuing to punish everybody beneath them is outrageous. And in fact, I'll just remind my colleagues who are here, the president and the senator from Washington, we all were together once at a lunch a number of years ago with Senator John McCain before he passed away. A decision was made that was sort of rare, that we would have a closed door lunch with all 100 senators, and Senator McCain would speak about the unspeakable, his time as a POW in Hanoi during the Vietnam War. His plane was shot down in Hanoi. He was beaten and tortured. He was imprisoned as a prisoner of war for multiple years. There came a time during his imprisonment where his captors realized that his father was one of the key members of the Navy, key members of the brass. He was a VIP. Many people had been imprisoned as POWs in that same Hanoi Hilton before Senator McCain. But the North Vietnamese believed if we let Senator McCain out, it will suggest that we're beneficial. But it also may weaken the morale of those who remain here, because we'll let out somebody who is high up on the list and will continue to punish others. And they came to Captain McCain, and they said, "We will let you out." How tempting that must have been. I don't know any of us who can kind of put themselves in that position. Madam President, you and I were together at the memorial to John McCain where he was shot down in Hanoi a few years ago. Put yourself in that position. You have been a POW for years, and you are given an offer for your freedom. And he turned it down. And he turned it down and said, "I'm not accepting it because there were people who were here before me. And only if you let all of those hostages go will I then accept your offer of freedom. I'm not going to let you benefit me and continue punishing others who were here before me." That's what the ethos of the American military is. You don't benefit the VIP or the big shot or the person with the high rank and punish others. And so for us to countenance such a suggestion in this body, that we would have a debate and a vote on a few of the top brass, and then we would allow the punishment of these poor people who are trying to move across the country, whose kids need to be in school, whose spouses have jobs they can't report to. Not only should we not do this here, I can't imagine that the key military leadership who are waiting in line would even want us to do that. There is one solution for this, and the solution is for the Republican minority in this body to go to Senator Tuberville and convince him to stop this punishment of these individuals. These officers had nothing to do with the policy that Senator Tuberville doesn't like it. If he doesn't like the policy, I disagree with him on that. But he's within his rights to not like the policy. But when he has had repeated ability to try to persuade his colleagues that the policy is wrong, and he's been unsuccessful, he should not take out his inability to persuade his colleagues on these patriotic public servants. I urge, in the most urgent way that I can, the quickest end to this blockade. Let's get these people in positions that they have earned through their lives of service and enable them to continue to serve this country. With that, Madam President, I yield the floor.